My eyes stung as I stared at my father's text message, the glow of my phone illuminating the small pile of carefully wrapped Christmas presents on my bed. Those 5 words cut deeper than anything I'd faced overseas. Christmas is better without you. The room seemed to tilt sideways. My fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly, not from anger, but from the sudden hollow feeling expanding in my chest. 3 years of deployed holidays, missed birthdays, graduations. I had always told myself that family would be there when the service ended. All of it collapsed into this single digital rejection. Outside my apartment window, Christmas lights blinked cheerfully along the street. I typed back a single word. Understood. Direct. Controlled. The kind of reply that once belonged to a soldier following orders, even when those orders shattered everything. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 years old, a former Army specialist, and this is the story of how I discovered what family truly means when mine tried to erase me. I had imagined this homecoming for years. The first Christmas, without sand in my boots or the constant tension that had become my second skin. My duffel bag sat half-packed in the corner, filled with small gifts I'd collected during my final tour, a hand-carved music box for Mom, vintage fishing lures for Dad, custom onesies for my niece and nephew I had never met, but one person made sure I never felt forgotten, my Grandpa Thomas. He was my lifeline during deployment, sending packages labeled "For when the world feels too small," and letters written in his careful, old-fashioned handwriting. His envelopes smelled faintly of pipe tobacco, comforting and familiar. When we last spoke over a video call, he told me, "The family needs to see who you've become, Emily, and you need to remember who you were before all this." He'd listened when others didn't, through my awkward job interviews, the restless nights, the isolation of coming home to a world that moved on without me. And now, the one man who'd always believed in me was gone, and no one had even told me. 5 days before Christmas, I didn't cry. I didn't call. I just canceled my flight, unpacked my bags, and spent December 25th alone in my apartment with takeout Chinese food and the muffled sounds of neighbors celebrating through the walls. 2 days after Christmas, I woke to my phone buzzing repeatedly against the nightstand. Missed calls filled the screen, 5 from Mom, 2 from my sister Rachel, 1 from my brother Kevin, and 1 from Dad. There was also an unfamiliar number with my hometown area code. The voicemails began with my mother's tearful plea. "Emily, please. I just found out what your father said. We didn't mean it like that. Please call us. Something's happened." Rachel's message was colder. "You not showing up complicated everything." "You're not the only one hurting." Kevin's voice cracked with panic. You need to call Mom. It's about Grandpa. He passed away on the 24th, and there's something about the will." The last voicemail came from the unknown number. "Miss Carter, this is Veronica Jackson, a state attorney for the late Thomas Carter. Please contact our office immediately regarding the execution of his final will and testament." My hands froze. Grandpa Thomas, gone on Christmas. And no one thought to tell me. The one person who had stood by me was gone. And my family hadn't even cared enough to reach out. I called the law office immediately. The attorney confirmed what I had begun to suspect. I was the primary beneficiary out of Grandpa's estate. His home, land, investments, and shares in the regional brewery he helped found. Everything. But there was a condition. I had to attend the formal will reading in person on January 3rd. If I failed to appear, the estate would be contested, and everything would go to my father. Did he know about the way things were between us? I asked quietly. There was a pause. Yes, the attorney said. That's why he changed his will 6 months ago, and why he required the reading to be recorded. It all made sense. My father's cruel message wasn't about Christmas. It was about keeping me away from that reading. The messages after Grandpa's death weren't about grief. They were about panic. The panic of losing what they thought was theirs. I booked a flight that afternoon, not as the forgotten daughter seeking forgiveness, but as the woman they underestimated, the one coming to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The will reading was scheduled for 10 a.m. on January 3rd. I arrived in my hometown the night before and stayed at a hotel. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. At 9:59, I walked through the polished oak doors of Nasher Jackson Legal Services. I wore a navy blazer, dark jeans, and the same boots that had carried me through 3 deployments. My hair was tied back in a neat bun, disciplined, focused. When I entered the conference room, my family turned as one. Dad sat stiff in a rumpled suit, Mom clutching her purse with white knuckles. Rachel's expression flickered between shock and irritation. Kevin wouldn't meet my eyes. You actually came, Rachel muttered. I sat across from them. Grandpa wanted me here, I said calmly. I wouldn't miss it. The attorney entered right on time, placed a small recorder on the table, and pressed play. Grandpa's voice filled the room, clear, steady, and heartbreakingly familiar. If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And if Emily's in the room, thank you, kid. I knew you'd come. Mom lowered her head. Dad's jaw clenched tight. I want to begin by saying this, Grandpa continued. Emily was the only one who reached out without being asked. She never wanted anything except to talk. For that, she gets everything. The silence that followed was absolute. The attorney read the terms, the farmhouse, the land, the brewery shares, the investments, all transferred to me. And anyone who contested the will would forfeit their secondary bequests. Rachel was the first to speak, her voice sharp. This is ridiculous. You barely even talked to him lately. I looked her straight in the eye. Maybe because you never told me he was sick. Or that he'd passed. You had time for parties and social posts, but not one message about Grandpa. Dad's face turned red. You think wearing that uniform makes you better than the rest of us? I leaned forward, voice calm. No, but it does make me braver. Brave enough to come home after you told me not to. Mom whispered through tears. We didn't know your father sent that message. I shook my head. You didn't ask. You never ask. The attorney slid a folder toward me. Miss Carter, if there are no objections, please sign here. I signed without hesitation. When I stood, no one moved. They just sat there, stunned, watching the daughter they had cast aside claim everything they'd tried to take. At the doorway, I paused. You didn't want me home for Christmas, I said quietly. Now, this isn't your home anymore. I left without looking back. The January air outside hit my face like clarity, cold, clean, final. Over the next week, I met with advisors and property managers. The brewery shares alone were worth more than I could have imagined. My parents had 30 days to vacate the farmhouse. The property manager delivered the notice. I didn't need to, Dad called once. I didn't answer. Rachel emailed, calling me selfish. I forwarded it to the attorney and blocked her. Kevin left voicemails, regretful, apologetic, but the time for apologies had passed. Mom showed up outside the law office once while I was signing final documents. She didn't speak, just watched from across the street. I walked past her without a word. For years, I'd made excuses for their silence. I'd blamed my career, my independence, even myself. But that chapter was over. By February, the property was mine. They'd left the keys on the kitchen counter with an envelope that held my childhood photo album and a short note from Mom. "We failed you. I donated most of their old furniture to veterans, housing, and stored the family keepsakes in the attic. I didn't win because of revenge. I won because Grandpa Thomas, the one person who truly saw me, made sure I could stand on my own. Now, the farmhouse has a new purpose. It's become a retreat for veterans, adjusting to civilian life, a safe space for those who know what it means to start over." 3 years later, I still haven't spoken to my family, but every time I see someone walk through those doors and find peace, I know Grandpa would be proud. They shut me out at Christmas, but I found my way home. Anyway, because family isn't about who shares your blood, it's about who stands beside you when everyone else walks away. And as I look up at the stars from Grandpa's porch, I can almost hear his voice again, calm and proud. "Told you the right moment would come, kiddo." If you felt this story hit home, don't forget to tap that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next story. I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your country or city in the comments below. Thanks for watching.